Hello and welcome to this short video we've put together about managing challenging behaviour. When we say challenging, we mean behaviour that we can find difficult to manage, and that can come out in lots of different ways depending on what each family expects from one another. A standard expectation, for example, is that we do not interrupt conversations. The person interrupting may feel they have something important to say, or needs that need to be met, and so can show frustration when they're not listened to. It seems like a simple thing to understand, but the social rules of situations are not necessarily every other person's priority. As with the autism service, it is important to mention here that we often see a degree of behaviour that challenges from young people with autism, because they may not understand what the expectations are, and sometimes they fully understand but don't agree with the priority of that expectation. We can often see young people with autism struggling to cope with the rules and expectations, and when it all gets too much, that's when we end up in meltdown. Living in a confusing world with constantly changing rules and expectations must be exceptionally difficult to get to grips with. That being said, children with autism are still children. They do know how to push buttons. The attention they need for their learning of social skills may be a little bit higher than that of someone without autism, and they may just continue doing what they think works until they get angry that it isn't working anymore. We eventually have the button pushed to the point that we ourselves get angry, and the way we choose to react is crucial, but we'll get to that bit in a minute. The difficulty parents often have is that a meltdown is not the child's fault and not in their control. A tantrum is, however. They look very similar, but it is often difficult to put in the sanctions for a meltdown if the child cannot help it. There are two ways of dealing with this. 1. Notice the difference, and 2. Change the reaction we have. In noticing the difference, a meltdown can usually be seen written all over the child's face. I have had described to me a glazed over look, in which you can see the child is not in control. For a tantrum, you get the classic crocodile tears, and a big telltale sign is that it is easily stopped when giving in. So if the child wanted something, you say no, they get upset, you give them the item and they stop. With a meltdown, there is nothing you can do, and communication or attempts to calm the situation will escalate the issue. It's best to observe their safety from a distance. For the change of reaction, it is interesting to see that when a child cries, everyone around them will try to stop them from crying, and they will try everything until they get to the point of saying, "What else can I do?" And then we usually experience frustration ourselves. The issue is, we need to forget the word "what" and start asking why. Why is this happening? If we know why something is happening, we tend to be able to fare better in managing it. Fortunately for us, there only tends to be 5 main motivations behind behaviour. Tangible, meaning we want something, so think sweets or toys or something like that, something physical that we want. Avoidance, we do not want to be in this situation. If I scream, you'll take me out of it. Simple. Attention, this is why our reaction is crucial, because any reaction is attention, whether that is shouting or listening. If a child pokes you until you listen, you may shout to start with, but then the shouting stops and all of a sudden you're listening, and they're going to learn from that. Sensory, plain and simple. The behaviour feels good. I like to hit, I like to scream, I like to swear, that sort of thing. And finally, expression of emotion. I don't know how to put this into words, so I'll hit you. I'll make you feel how I feel. I'll show you how angry I am with my colourful language. That kind of thing. The thing is, we're all motivated by something. And to get that thing, we will find the easiest route to it. Of course we know what we're meant to do, but why would we do that when there's an easier way? So, I want money to buy stuff that I want. I know I have to work for it, but what if someone would just give it to me for free? So I ask someone if they will give me money. They say no. I ask more aggressively, because we're cavemen at the end of the day, and this has worked for thousands of years. If we want something, we get aggressive for it. They still say no. They offer me the solution. I work for money. Yeah, I don't like the fact that I have to work for it, but it's better than no money. I get what I want in the end, and both parties are happy in this arrangement. That's all well and good from an adult's perspective, but how do we get children to understand this? The issue is that we see it as an expectation, and we need to look at it more from the perspective that it's a skill that's being learned. This needs a plan. We need a goal. How do we want this to look by the end? We need to identify the skills that the children will need to achieve this goal. And then finally, we need autonomy, for the child to be a part of the process and be able to manage aspects of it themselves. So let's think goals. They need to be realistic. A child with autism may always struggle to hold a full two-way conversation, but can they learn to wait their turn to speak? They may not be able to make eye contact, but can they pretend by looking at someone's nose? You need to be able to pick your battles. It will be incredibly difficult to manage a shopping list of skills learning every day, so it is best to choose the most important skills and work from there. Too much and it's overwhelming. We need to be able to let some of the stuff slide for now and deal with it later. Finally, the goals need to be shared, particularly with family members and schools. Everyone should be facilitating the chosen skills in the same way, and everyone should be on board. Of course it helps if the child is on board with the learning, but currently they have an easier way of attaining their wants, so for the child to be on board is often a luxury, but it can happen sometimes. So let's have a think about the skills themselves. We need to know what the child can't do. What is their limit? We cannot be expecting our children to attain the impossible, and we need to be aware of where the limit is. This is tough because sometimes the children will present right now as their limit, but once you begin to push a little, you'll recognise where the limit is, and this is something that's important to consider when we're thinking of the goals in the first place, but you know your children better than anyone. I also recommend playing to the child's strengths. I always like to work on a tough skill and an easy skill. I usually throw in a skill that they are already doing, but it's a little bit difficult, just so they're experiencing some early success and they have confidence to tackle bigger challenges later on. Finally, we need to remember that this is all learning. It takes time and it helps to break the skills down. We may set a skill like tidy your room, when in fact we could probably start a lot smaller than that. The child might already make their bed, with a bit of huffing, but it probably gets done. So make that skill something to work on and praise them for doing it, alongside maybe putting the rubbish in the bin. We can add bringing plates down, putting clothes away, etc. to a later date. Who knows, you may end up with a teenager willing to use a vacuum. Finally, consider their autonomy. There has been tons of information already, so I'll keep this bit of it simple. In short, this is their confidence to complete the skill, or at least aspects of it themselves. The more they complete it, the more confident they get, the less encouragement you have to give. You may start out with a well done every 5 seconds, but over time you'll be able to reduce this as their confidence in completing the skill improves. Let's have a look at this in practice. We had a look at this earlier. A bit of a temper tantrum going on, and the parent responding with justified frustration. Let's have a plan run down. The child is interrupting a conversation and will likely reduce their behaviour when that attention is given. Therefore, it's likely that that's the motivation behind what's going on and why this is happening. The child wants attention. A goal is for the child to be able to wait their turn, and the skill that they need to complete this is they need tolerance for waiting. This can be tough with autism because we sometimes are unable to predict how long we have to wait. So for the sake of their confidence, we may add 1 or 2 requests of "wait a minute please" to prompt their behaviour. I mean, yeah, that's all well and good, but the child doesn't want to wait, so how do we encourage the learning of these skills? The answer is to motivate the development with rewards. There is a lot of belief around punishment working, and in reality, yes it does to some extent, because we see quick results. However, punishment does not allow for the replacement of behaviour. That is, it will tell the child that you're annoyed, but not that they have to wait for your attention. If the child has no other way of attaining that need easily, then they will just continue to do what they were doing before. So, for example, you may have spared yourself that few minutes of prodding, but it will be on its way again soon. The child also learns nothing from punishment, other than if I do that, I get shouted at, or I get my Xbox taken. They don't learn what to do instead, or what was actually expected of them. In some cases, they may see you angry, and then not understand why they are being punished for being, in their eyes, also just angry. This can lead to some resentment of the punisher, and it may be harder to build trust with the child at a later date, and they may in fact turn to keeping the behaviour a secret. You see this a lot in those American teenage movies, The dad is always seen as too strict, so the teenager doesn't ask to go to the party, they just sneak out. It's that kind of thing. Reward, on the other hand, gives affirmation, basically saying, yes, you are doing the right thing. It gives encouragement. You didn't quite get it right this time, but I saw that you tried. Well done, keep trying. It can provide direction for the child. They may even develop future skills as a bonus, off the back of these early developed skills, based on intuition alone, so they might begin to realise the expectations and start to develop skills off of that. Most of all, reward builds trusting relationships. So, if I get something wrong, it's okay, I can always try again. If I do well, I get something good out of it. We are all motivated by reward on a daily basis. We seek things we like and avoid things we don't like. It is just the case of building this into skill development. A child is much more likely to try in maths if they get a sticker rather than losing their break time for incomplete work. We're nearly done now, I promise. I just want to talk about how to build this into our daily skill development.
First thing we want to do is set our expectations. These should begin specific, but eventually become developed as the skill increases. Examples can be, I expect you to wait for 1 minute if I ask. I expect you to use calm hands when feeling angry. I expect you to walk away instead of swearing. All of these are instructing the child on what your expectations are, rather than simply stating, don't interrupt, don't hit, don't swear. When the expectations are set, we ignore the behaviour we don't want to see. This is probably the toughest part, because we ourselves are actually rewarded by society for acting against difficult behaviour and trying to manage it. Try not to worry about judgment. You know what you're doing and you have a plan. Try to think about what your child is trying to gain, so those 5 motivations, and don't give it to them until they're trying to meet those expectations. It will get even more difficult because they are trying behaviour that has worked for years and now it suddenly doesn't. They may escalate the behaviour, so they could shout louder, maybe hit harder, or even use more vibrant language. You may see the introduction of some new inappropriate behaviours too. However, any change in their behaviour, better or worse, shows your reaction is having an effect. The key here is to be consistent in your expectations. Just make sure no one is getting hurt, but ignore the behaviour itself. For example, if your child is hitting their sibling, it is important to intervene and split them up, just to ensure no one gets injured, but without paying direct attention to the behaviour itself. So if the hitting is happening to get your attention, for example, split them up and don't give the attention, simply repeat the expectation. As an example, you could pick them up and carry them into a different room and say, kind hands please, kind hands please. Once you start to see the behaviour you want, then give them what they want. The second the hitting stops and kind hands begins, reward them by giving what they wanted, so the attention for example, and stating why they are receiving it. So, I saw you were feeling cross, you used your kind hands, well done. Because you used kind hands, I'm going to spend some time with you. Well done for trying. You should gradually see the behaviour start to fade out. They will still try to push buttons at times, but just be consistent. That's the important part.
Visual aids can be helpful to support with expectations. So you can see in this picture, the parent responds with their expectation after the first prod. They give the prompt, 1 minute, and then continue talking. They can start a timer for 1 minute that the child can see. The child throws a tantrum until they realise their parent is not responding to this. The second the minute is up, the parent responds. They stated the expectation, provided a visual aid, ignored the poor behaviour, and the child now knows that no matter what they do, the timer keeps going until that minute is up. For all this, I can't express enough how much resilience is needed. It is tough stuff and a lot of hard work, but it creates better outcomes down the line. You need to stay consistent and only take on what you know that you can manage. You need teamwork. Services are out there to support, but the main support comes from family. Make sure everyone knows the plan, you're all on the same page and everyone is consistent. There's a problem in skill learning when two parents have different plans. Make sure you pay attention. It's an exceptionally slow process, and so it's imperative to pay attention to all those tiny improvements you see to show that what you're doing is working. It will motivate you. Every minute less in a meltdown, every time they choose to say sugar instead of something more sour. Reward yourself by noticing your progress. That's all for this video, but there is a lot more to this stuff. I plan on producing some resources and tools to be made available for families to explain how rewards can be used in different ways, how to use special interests to your advantage, and maybe even some ready-made tools to facilitate reward systems. Because I'm aware of the massive amount of information in this video, it's difficult to squeeze it all into a short clip. Until then, please remember to know your limits. Only take on what you can. Break skills down into bite-sized chunks. Make sure to adapt. So if it isn't working, don't scrap the plan. Just alter the bits that aren't going so well and try again. Make sure to observe your progress. Keep track of what's going well. It will help keep you motivated as well. And make sure that you reach out to services. I will be producing resources, so feel free to contact us to see what we have, and we're always happy to provide any advice around what has been talked about in this video. If you're ever unsure, just give us a call. I hope this video has been helpful, but it's a bye-bye for now. Thank you.